Welcome to Married to History, where we try to be informative, entertaining, and family-friendly.
Aloha, I'm Christopher. I have a fancy piece of paper on my wall that says that I know more about history than most people do, including fools.
I'm Shirley. I'm a homeschool mom that relies on good curriculum, Christopher, and Parade the musical to teach our kids history.
Yeah, I don't think I know anything about that one.
I told you about that one. We talked about it just the other night.
You tell me lots of things. Doesn't mean I remember. Doesn't mean I was listening.
I know that. All right, well, we have an exciting history question today. Honey, I have a history question for you.
What were you talking?
I love you so much.
I love you. I love history questions too.
Do you?
I do.
Okay, so this is an exciting one because this is a listener topic suggestion.
Okay.
And this is our first listener email from someone we don't know in real life.
Cool.
I mean, I think if it turns out we know this guy in real life, I'm going to feel really bad.
You don't know who it was?
Well, no, it's Raymond. So
I don't think I know any Raymonds.
he said, well, yeah, neither did I. So,
Okay.
yeah. So thank you for listening, Raymond. Is this someone you know
Is it
from
Raymond? Is it Rayburn?
Raymond.
Raymond. Okay.
Yeah, cool. So thank you for listening, Raymond. And hopefully I'm pronouncing your name right.
Mahalo.
And thank you for sending in this topic idea. So he says, can you consider doing Mutiny on the Bounty? Now, this confused me because I thought that was just a pirate movie from like the 30s.
It's not a pirate movie. And it
sure?
wasn't from the 30s either.
Yeah, it was.
Mutiny on the Bounty was not from the... Okay, so I don't know how many other versions. The one that sticks out in my head is the Mel Gibson and Anthony Hopkins one. That was definitely not made in the 30s.
Okay, so I know it's not a pirate movie just because I looked it up because I wanted to confirm, but like it is definitely from the 30s. There's been a million different versions of this story.
Okay, that I'm not surprised about.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll look it up while you talk, but yes. I literally don't know anything about Mutiny on the Bounty. I really did assume it was a pirate story. Because, like, mutiny makes me think the sea, and, like, who mutinies? Pirates, of course.
Yeah, you'll love this. While most people think that mutiny is a sea thing, no, mutiny applies to land too.
No, I know, but no one ever talks about it in a land context.
Yeah, well, how often do you hear people talk about mutiny, period? It's not something that happens all the time.
Right. Now, when I...
Anymore.
Right. Well, when I told this to... I was talking to Primus about this question. Mm-hmm. She was like... Her impression was... Well, bounty, why are they mutinying over a bounty? Like, going with the pirate thing? Clearly, they just had, like, a big haul, like a big victory, bountiful, yay. Why are they fighting over it? There's plenty to go around.
Okay, so there's the classic case of the misunderstanding of the title. Remember, the title is Mutiny on the Bounty, not Mutiny of the Bounty or about the bounty.
All right, so tell me, what is it?
All right, so Bounty is the name of a ship. I believe it's the HMS Bounty. It might not have been HMS. So I don't think I've ever actually read the book, but I am familiar with a handful of details about it. I've never seen the movie either. I know I've seen like a clip or two from it. That's how I know. Okay, it is HMS. All right, that's how I know that Anthony Hopkins and Mel Gibson's were in the one that I saw, or at least the one that of clips of which I saw. So I am not overly familiar with all the details, but I will try to share what I can if somebody were to ask me about the HMS Bounty.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
That we do this one in 2-part fashion, where you go and find out. And then we'll come back.
I have to sit down and watch the movie. I'm not.
You don't have to watch the movie. Why would you watch a movie about a historical event?
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
You insane person! Did we not just do a correction episode on Custer because all your info came from a movie?
So, well, no, okay. Here, let me answer this question. So, this would be one of those cases where I did not know that HMS Bounty was based on a real thing.
Oh, you didn't know?
No, so I'm familiar that the story exists. And I guess in my mind, I've always thought that, okay, it's a book about a fictional mutiny of a fictional crew.
Yeah.
That it has, like, I understand that maybe it was based on something that really happened, because mutinies really happen. But, like, until this moment, really, I've never had the reason to think to myself that, oh, this is a real thing that really happened in history.
Heck yeah.
So, well, now that you've mentioned that to me, okay, yes, now I'm actually more interested in it.
So I'll just share a little bit what have I learned. Okay, so this actual mutiny happened in 1789.
Okay.
And then the book was written, I'm not sure what year, but it says many books and articles were written. And so then starting in 1916, people started making movies about it. So the first one was 1916 in Australia. It was a silent film, obviously. There was another one in 1933, another one in 1935, one in 1962, 1984 with Hopkins and Gibson. And then 1998, BBC did a documentary. 2017, looks like there was another documentary. So, yeah, it's a very popular topic. Apparently, it's important or interesting in some way, so I'd love to learn.
Okay. So does that mean you don't want me to say anything right now and you want me to do the research first and then come back to it?
Share what you know, but keep it brief, just so we can laugh about how wrong you were.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so as I understand it, as is common at the time, there's a man who wants to get rich. He believes he can get rich by going to one of the new, or not necessarily to the New World, but by going out on an expedition and bringing back produce that is going to make him rich. If I remember correctly, Bly is specifically interested in breadfruit. And I gotta admit, I always kind of wondered, why breadfruit? I have been to where breadfruit grows. I have almost been killed by breadfruit falling from trees.
Holy cow.
Breadfruit trees are really, really big. And yeah, that stuff drops down and it smacks and it splatters everywhere once it hits.
Is it
and
like
that
a
stuff
coconut?
can kill you if it hits. No, it's not hard because when it hits the ground, it splashes. When a coconut hits the ground, it's usually still intact.
Yeah, but if that hit your head, it would shatter.
Coconut has big, thick armor around it before you get to the parts that you actually eat.
Okay.
Yeah, breadfruit is messy. There are places and where streets and sidewalks were just covered with breadfruit all over the place.
But it would hurt if it hit you on the ground.
And I've had breadfruit on a couple of times. It's not for me. I didn't like it. I didn't find it very tasty. I kind of found it rather dull. So when I think about breadfruit combined with all the other exotic fruits and produce and whatnot that I've eaten from the areas where breadfruit grows, I think to myself, what idiot would choose this stuff over that stuff? But I can't say that I am in the mindset of Captain Bligh, so I do not. Whatever the case is, he wanted breadfruit. He was, I believe, he was particularly obsessed with breadfruit. So he gets a crew. They get their breadfruit, and this is where my details end. I know that some point between them going out to get breadfruit, that being the goal, at some point his crew, for whatever their reasons, have enough time to stick around and take wives among a native population of an island or an area that they land in. And then at some point there's a division between Bligh and his crew, where, if I understand correctly, the crew do not want to return to Europe for some reason. They want to either settle somewhere else or they want to stay and be with these families that they've started. And that's the limit of my knowledge.
Okay.
I shouldn't say that's the limit of my knowledge. I believe the mutiny is successful in that at least the crew get away from Bligh. I don't remember what happens to Bligh.
Okay.
And outside of that, the only thing I know that one of my favorite franchises, Star Trek and Star Trek 4, they named the bird of prey that they're flying home in HMS Bounty after
I knew
the Bounty.
That. That sounds familiar.
Which is another one of the things where I was always kind of wondering about but none of them are mutinying against Kirk.
Yeah.
Nobody ever mutinies against Kirk.
It's a good name for a ship, I guess.
So's the Serenity. why do they go with HMS Bounty? And if I remember correctly, they say it's with a sense of historical irony. So
because they're not mutinying.
Oh, okay, yeah, maybe that's what the sense was. Okay, all right.
Cool.
Oh, then now that I say that, because I remember the line, they said that they named it HMS Bounty out of a sense of historical irony. So that should have been a clue to me all those many years ago that, no, this is historically based, not culturally based.
Right.
All right. So, yes, I shall have to look that up.
Fantastic. I cannot wait. And it has to do with big boats, so I'm surprised you didn't know more about this.
The Bounty was not a big boat.
Oh.
Well, okay, bigger than
it's an old ship.
It's bigger than your 2 or 3 man sailboat that I used to sail on, but it's not like she's not a man of war. She's not a frigate. Okay.
Well, I don't know. You learn. Teach me later. Okay. This will be fun. All right.
I'm pretty sure she's not a frigate.
Say bye for now.
I'm gonna go with a schooner, maybe a schooner or a sloop.
All right, and we're back. So what have you learned about that old pirate movie?
Pirates of the Caribbean?
No, Mutiny on the Bounty.
Is that the one that I was supposed to be reading about?
What did you read about?
Oh, I'm playing with you. Yeah, of course I read about that. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I mentioned this in I guess the first half of our episode.
Yep.
That I had no idea that this was based on a true story. Like I know that mutinies happen, but I assumed that this was all. So I knew that this was a book,
Mm-hmm.
and I just always thought that this was a fictional book. I had
Yeah.
no idea that any of this was based on a true story. So I was quite surprised.
Considering your love of old boats, I am shocked.
The Bounty wasn't exactly the most stellar of boats.
Okay.
All right, so yes, I learned quite a bit of things. All right, so oh man, there was a lot of stuff to get, and I don't know how much I can say without like drifting too far off into other subjects. All right, so let me start with one of the things that I think I found most interesting. The thing that among the things that I thought was the most fascinating was all right. So the two main characters in this, the antagonist and the protagonist,
They're real people. They're not characters.
A person can be a character and not a fictional thing in a story.
Okay.
So, are Captain Bligh and Christian Fletcher, or was it Fletcher Christian?
I don't know.
Suddenly, I'm forgetting the name. Is all right.
Should I look it up?
Maybe because now I can't remember if it was Christian Fletcher or Fletcher Christian. I'm pretty sure it was Christian Fletcher.
Bligh and Fletcher Christian.
All right.
That's a fun name.
So, among the more fascinating things that I found while doing this research was that Captain Bligh and Fletcher Christian actually have a relationship that goes long before the Bounty incident.
Okay.
So Bligh already had some connections in the Navy at a much earlier age, and Fletcher Christian's family, like he was not known to Bligh himself, but they were the families were friends or had friendships. Okay. And so when Fletcher wanted a career, he was getting a little bit late in the game because if you wanted to be a seaman, you had to start earlier.
Like
he was
10.
Yeah, like about 10 or 12, and he was in his late teens or so at the time. But the family contacts reach out to each other, and Bligh is the one who grants Fletcher his first position in the Royal Navy.
It's nice to know people in high places.
So yeah, they have a familiarity with each other, at least from that point in time. And he serves aboard one other of Bligh's ships before the Bounty incident comes into being. But as is often the case, and I think we mentioned this in past episodes, when wars end, the Navy gets decommissioned much for the most part. The regular sailors, they're out of work, and I think this would have included Fletcher because I don't believe he had a commission. And Bligh gets put on half pay. He doesn't have a command anymore, so they don't see each other again for a while, or at least they don't serve together for a while. But then through a friendship that Bligh has, he gets the gig on the Bounty to go on this... I was about to say archaeological, but that's not the right word. On this botany mission.
Okay.
And yeah, so when he gets this botany mission, it wasn't made clear to me who reached out to who, but he brought Fletcher back with him to serve as his first mate on this.
Makes sense.
So another thing that I remember is, so I knew that the Bounty was about breadfruit, and I always was kind of curious about that because I've had breadfruit. It's not that appetizing, so I don't know. Like, why does somebody want to go get breadfruit? So I found out what that was all about. The intention was to transplant the breadfruit to the Caribbean colonies from the Pacific Islands, or to the Caribbean colonies, to be a cheap source of food for the slaves. That's what it first was. So it wasn't that, there was a market in Europe and they were going to get rich off of breadfruit. Right. No, they thought this is going to be a cheap and easy thing for us to produce in the colonies to feed the slaves. And funnily enough, apparently the slave population agreed with me.
Really?
Yeah. Even though, after the Bounty incident, Bligh gets another command, and he goes back. He gets the breadfruit.
He finishes
and he successfully
the mission.
Comes back to the Caribbean.
Dang.
But yeah, the native population, or the slave population there, the people there, period, they don't like it. It's not appetizing to them, so they eat other foods.
Dang.
So it was all virtually for naught. So I don't know how successful it was, and I'm sure that some people ate it, but it didn't turn out to be the thing they wanted it to be. It did not. It was, the people were not gaga over it, and they would rather eat other things than eat this cheap and abundantly provided to them breadfruit.
Wow.
So yeah, that's what happened there, and that's why they were after breadfruit. And again, to all the people who have not experienced the joys that is breadfruit and breadfruit cheese, wear hard hats if you're ever going to walk underneath one. Okay, so on the mission itself. So first off, a couple of details that are kind of important to how this mutiny comes about playing. Bligh is the only officer And because this is a
Oh, because it's not a military ship.
this is not a military ship. This ship has been
Okay.
the ship was originally a merchantman. Then I believe it had a minor conversion to serve as a warship, and then it was converted again, or renovated, if you will, again, to serve as a botany ship.
Okay.
Among the things that this meant was that the space that normally would have been the captain's cabin was cleared out and expanded to create a makeshift greenhouse for the plants that they were going to be importing back. So this meant that there's already limited real estate on a ship. And this meant that now, okay, there's going to be even less so because they're all going to be packed. The living quarters are going to be more packed in. There's also not going to be...
But ships are already terrible for living quarter size.
So, because Bly is the only officer on board, this means that most of his men are probably not going to be that well disciplined because they're not Navy men. And it also means there's not going to be that much going for Bly discipline-wise on the ship because since there are no officers to help him maintain military-like discipline, this also means that there are no Marines on board at all to enforce discipline on board the crew. He's basically dealing with just the men. There's no honor system, or rather the honor system that binds them to his command is fluid.
Right, but like that's the norm for merchant ships. So like was he worse off than your average merchant ship?
That I don't know because there's enough of the idea of okay, I don't know how these men were getting paid. Were these men since this was a botany mission to provide food for the slave population? This wasn't a merchant venture. This wasn't. My guess is that the amount of pay or the amount of compensation that these men were getting is one of those things that would make them more inclined to be less willing to go along with the captain or the boss.
Or whatever.
So the only testimony we have to what happened throughout the whole of the journey really is Captain Bly's log. He kept a meticulous log, assuming that log is accurate, like he never embellished on anything. That's one of the records.
We love a primary source, but it is fallible.
We have the testimony of about 10 or so. There might have been a bit more. It was roughly 10 mutineers who made it back eventually to England to be tried or to have their day in court. So they have their testimonies. And then we have one other survivor of the mutineers, as the mutineers broke up into two groups. I'll get to that later.
Okay.
We have one other survivor of the mutineers who has his side of the story also. So we have these three different groups, their sides of the story.
Yeah.
All the testimonies differ a little bit better. And to this day, historians and surviving descendants of the people that were involved in this still argue one with another and with every book and movie or anything that anybody tries to do about, okay, what really happened? How should this person, our ancestor, be presented, be portrayed?
Remembered, yeah.
So the two most common things that I hear are that, one, that Bly was a tyrant, absolute bloodthirsty, fearful tyrant.
Sure.
And this is certainly the one that gets popular, if nothing else, because of the book. And like every rendition that I've ever heard of kind of passes him off as that. But from testimony from other people that knew Bly, and from some of the testimony among some of the survivors, and from at least the notes in his log, it would seem that, okay, well, he might have been a disciplinary guy. I mean, that's a captain.
He's a military man.
He's not a overbearing, tyrannical man.
Okay.
He, on some of the evidence that we have suggests that he had jovial or courtful relationships with some of the people, including Fletcher, where he was nice to them from time to time.
Okay.
He was social with them. So not just whipping people because, oh, you looked at me funny kind of a thing.
Okay.
So that's one of the things that we just don't know. We have witnesses with different accounts of, okay, was he this harsh disciplinarian or was he a fair man?
The truth is probably in the middle.
The truth is, probably in the middle. On their voyage, Bly's original orders are to sail around Cape Horn, that's the southern tip of South America, to go to Tahiti, pick up the breadfruit from Tahiti, and then continue west around Africa, so Cape Horn this time, and then head up into the colonies.
Why didn't he just take the Panama Canal?
Give me strength.
What?
The Panama Canal didn't exist yet. The French hadn't even begun their work on the Panama Canal.
Well, wasn't there a river there or something?
There were lakes, but they were really high up. You had to start digging before you could get to them.
Well, you said his boat wasn't very big. Couldn't they just carry it across?
Your words hurt. So much sometimes.
I know. Anyways, they went around Africa.
So yes, his orders were to eventually, he was going to be circumnavigating the globe on this mission.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so I was expecting you to say he went back the way he came, back around Cape Horn.
Nope. He went south through the Atlantic, under South America, up to Tahiti, across the Pacific, across the Indian, under Africa, then back up through the Atlantic to the Caribbean.
What? That seems longer.
Those were his orders.
Whoa. Okay.
So they spent about a month or so trying, and because of the winds and the weather, that going around either horn, the Cape Horn or the Cape of Good Hope for Africa, going around either one of them is risky because of the weather patterns there. They tried for about a month or so to get around Cape Horn, and it just wasn't happening. So they eventually turned around and went under the Cape of Good Hope instead.
Wait, stop. I think you switched it. So their original journey was under South America, so Cape Horn.
Yep, under South America through Cape Horn, but the winds were too bad, so they turned around. They went to Africa under the Cape of Good Hope, or through the Cape of Good Hope instead.
To get to Tahiti?
To get to Tahiti.
Oh, so the start of their journey, they didn't go as planned.
Correct.
So they went backwards.
Yep.
Okay, got it.
All right, but they were able to make it to Tahiti without incident. While they were there, this is probably one of all the things that I read, I think this was the moment that Bligh made his first really bad, probably the most ultimately the bad decision.
Okay.
So in order to cultivate all the plants they needed, they were going to be in Tahiti for a while. They were there for about 5 months. And during that 5-month time, he allowed his men to live on the land, not stay on the ship.
Well, that seems like a nice thing to do.
It absolutely seems like a nice thing to do. And it seems reasonable, too, because...
It's a long time.
Men living on the boat for 5 months, just sitting there is not going to be the easiest thing to deal with.
Yeah.
But what the consequence of this is that the men got used to being on the land in this place where the people had few, if any, social inhibitions, shall we say.
Yeah,
There was
I know
an
what you're
awful lot
getting
of
at.
philandering, and more than a couple of men got married or tried to have a family or started a family, something to that nature. So when the time did eventually come for them to leave, not everybody was, or you can expect that not everybody was terribly happy about it. Now, there's nothing in the log or shared in the witness testimonies that says there was any grunting about leaving Tahiti when the time came. But even if there wasn't any grunting or grumbling when it was time to leave, it's more than likely that several members of the crew were thinking about how much more fun or better their lives were when they were still on the island.
Right.
Instead of, now they're back to work.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Who would want to leave paradise?
Yeah. So they get the crops that they need. They start their voyage back across the Pacific through the Indian Ocean. So they're going back the way they came and under Cape Horn up to the Caribbean.
Nope. Cape of Good Hope.
Sorry, Cape of Good Hope, yes.
So around Africa.
Yeah. Around Africa up to the Caribbean.
Got it.
So I don't remember exactly how far they got. They don't get anywhere close to Australia or the Dutch colonies and the East Indies before the mutiny eventually takes place. And there was nothing that I found rock solid as far as evidence. Like no one thing that this was the straw that broke the camel's back kind of a thing.
Okay.
The most common things that I found were that supposedly Bligh yelled at, berated Christian, embarrassed him publicly from time to time about at least some things. I couldn't find anybody that would specifically say, oh, this was the thing that Bligh was yelling at him about. Only witnesses saying that, Fletcher wasn't too happy that Bligh was coming down hard on him about
he was
a couple
his
of
buddy.
things. And so eventually there is mutiny. Again, nothing that I read anywhere indicated any one cause to do this. So one night when Fletcher and a couple of his guys who are sympathetic to we're going to do this, we're going to mutiny, and they managed to arrange it, or it was already arranged because of the duty schedule, that they were the ones who were awake while the rest of the crew was asleep. So they broke into the magazine, they armed themselves, got everybody else up, and basically with them being the only ones armed, this was the mutiny.
What kind of magazines were they? Were like like celebrity magazines, or like Sportsman
Give me
Today?
Strength. Why do the gods hate me so? What did I ever do to them?
What? Sports Illustrated?
The magazine, for those of you who don't know, is what you call the ammunition storage. Like with
Oh,
guns
that
today, when you put a
magazine.
new clip in, we call that the magazine.
Right.
So, according to everything I read, this was not a one-sided mutiny. This was a very
Uh-huh.
divided crew. It was about half and half, and less than half were on the side of the mutineers. Some witnesses have
Oh.
even argued that of those ones that did join the mutineers,
Uh-huh.
the original ringleaders, some of them it's suspected
Chickened
only
out.
did so because they're the
Oh.
ones with the guns, and some have argued that okay, even though the loyalists outnumbered
Ah.
the mutineers are the ones that had the guns, so maybe that's why the
Right.
loyalists didn't put up so much of a fight.
Wait, but so how big was the crew to begin with?
The crew was a little bit over 40 men,
Oh, that's
yeah,
tiny. So we're
and
talking like a dozen men
a little bit more than
or
that.
so.
So if I remember correctly, the numbers were 22 loyalists and I want to say 17 or 18 mutineers. So it was
Wow.
almost a 50-50
Yeah.
split. So the mutiny is successful again. The loyalists, they don't fight back.
Uh-huh.
Bligh and all the loyalists are going to be put into one of the ships and boats and set off. Oh, the
Uh-huh.
problem is that there's too many of the loyalists. So the Bounty has, I think, 3 different boats of
Okay.
different sizes. Originally, well, they want to give Bligh and the loyalists the smallest one, but there's too many of them. So they
Right.
go to the next one, but there's still too many of them. So they have to give them the biggest one, and there's still too many loyalists.
Oh my
So a
gosh.
couple of them Christian forces to stay because he needs their skills on the ship.
Okay.
And then there's like 2 or 3 other guys that, even though they're fiercely loyal to Blythe, they have to stay on the ship as well because there's just not enough room in the boat that Bligh and the other guys are going to be set off
Oh my
on.
gosh. How would you feel to be like the guy who's like, well, we really want to send you off into the ocean with nothing, but I guess we have to keep you.
So, well, at least 2 of those guys did before they left, and Bligh honored his word on this. Before they left, they shouted back to Bligh, "It's like, hey, make sure you tell people I wanted to come with you. I am being held against my will." And Bligh promised them that he
Right.
was going to do that, and everything that I found suggested that no, he honored his word. I mean, he noted it in his
Oh.
log, and he
Yeah.
bore testimony of when he got back
Did
to.
he take his log with him?
Yeah, he was allowed to keep his logbook,
Oh,
and he
wow.
kept his logbook as they made their way back.
Yeah.
So at this point, the crew is obviously split up. So I'm going to follow Blythe's trail, and then we're going to follow the mutineers.
Okay.
All right, so they're near an inhabited island at the time of the mutiny. So Bligh and his people originally make for that island.
Uh-huh.
But like I said, it's populated. The natives are not friendly. So after a brief skirmish with the natives in which one of Bligh's loyalists does get killed, they get back in the
Ooh.
boat and they set sail for another island. I think they make a handful of stops before they eventually do go all the way to a Dutch colony. I wrote the name down because I couldn't remember what it was. I think it's called Kaupang.
Okay.
It was 3,500 miles from where they were originally set off. 3,500
That sounds like
miles
a lot.
by boat, yeah. By a fairly small boat.
And do they have oars? They don't have a sail.
No, they probably could have makeshift a sail if it didn't already have one.
Oh.
And yeah, they probably had oars too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So yeah, they were able to make the journey. They didn't lose anybody else during that time, so it was just the one guy who was
Did they
killed
have
by the natives on that
food with
island.
them?
That's why I think that they probably stopped once in a while because
Okay.
while they would have had some provisions on board,
Yeah.
it would have been limited because the boat was already limited on space. So yeah, I think they must have stopped at least another island or 2 here or there to try to take on fresh provisions.
Wow.
But yes, eventually they do make it back to this Dutch colony. Over time, they're able to make passage on other ships to eventually get themselves from the Dutch colonies all the way back to England. There, Bligh faces a court-martial because, according to British military tradition, and this might be true of all military traditions,
Uh-huh.
if a captain loses his ship, whatever the circumstances, he faces a court-martial.
But that's victim blaming. He was mutinied
No,
against.
no. No.
He's the victim here.
Okay, so to be clear, the court-martial isn't to say, all right, you're guilty and we're going to bust you.
Yeah.
The court-martial is to find out what happened here. And yes,
Oh,
a
that's the
possible
trial.
outcome is you're going to get busted.
Okay.
Another possible outcome is no fault is going to be found with you. You go back to duty. And that's what
Okay.
happens for Bligh. He's found to have no fault. It's a bit of an embarrassment, so he loses a bit
Yeah.
of prestige, but he does go on from this to have a good and healthy career. He's a lieutenant when this happens. I almost said lieutenant. He's a lieutenant when this happens. By the time he passes away, He's a vice admiral. So
that sounds high.
This incident, yeah, it's very high. This incident does not kill his career.
Wow.
Slows it down a little bit, but luckily this all happens in the late 1780s, early 1790s. French Revolution is right around the corner. British Navy needs all hands on deck, and he is going to be given a couple of commands and distinguish himself in more than a couple of engagements during the Napoleonic era, and this is going to help him rise up and eventually, retire as a vice admiral, which, yes, is very high up. There were at least 3 different levels of admiral. There might have been more, and vice was, I believe, setting number 2. So he had got past the rear admiral, which was the lower rank, and had gotten up another rank after that.
So like a 3-star general instead of a 4-star.
Yeah, the 2-star general instead of a 1-star.
I have no idea which direction the stars go. I don't know why I brought up that example.
It's not too far removed, because the American military admiralty does use stars.
Oh, they do? Cool.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the admirals use stars. So like I said, that's not the end of his career. And we already mentioned that he does get put in charge of another botany mission.
He goes back.
It is a successful one. He makes it all the way back. They get the plants they need. They make it all the way back to Tahiti. So yeah, he goes on and he has a good career for this. Because he does go on and continue to have a career after this, he is not there when the trial for the mutineers that did get captured started. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Yeah.
So before I finish up with Bligh, I did find this rather sad and like amusing at the same time. Yeah. This is also not going to be the last mutiny he has to deal with.
For real?
Yes. So I don't remember the dates of this one,
guy.
but he's in command of another ship. And there is another mutiny that takes place. Now, this one is not his fault because all the sailors at this time were mutinying. I don't remember if it was a pay discrepancy or something else, but like all the sailors throughout the fleet, or at least all the ships that were anchored at this particular position that he was anchored in, they were all mutinying.
Were they unionizing? Strikes?
I wouldn't say unionizing or strikes with the deal, but so that mutiny, you can't really blame on him. And then among the assignments that he did get, he was made a provisional governor in Australia for a short time. And there was a mutiny there. It was called the Rum Mutiny. And I did read about it, but I think that would be getting off topic. So there was another mutiny.
Wow.
But again, didn't hurt his career all that bad because, again, still retired as a vice admiral.
Good for him.
All right, so that is the end of Captain Bligh, or at least of the story that I'm going to share with him.
Vice Admiral Bligh.
Yes. All right, so now we follow the trail of the mutineers, going back to when Bligh is put off the ship.
Okay.
All right, so the mutineers also look for an island to settle. There's one that they find. I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head, but they think this is a good place to hide because it's surrounded by natural coral, so it'd be very hard for another ship to storm the beach and try to get them. This island, however, is also inhabited, and these natives are also hostile, so they do eventually get beat off the island. Fletcher decides to take the men. They go back to Tahiti. In Tahiti, Fletcher's original idea is, okay, we're going to take on supplies and take on volunteers. I'm going to use quotes when I say volunteers, and I'll explain why in a moment.
Oh, I can guess.
To gather settlers for returning to that same island and still trying to set up a new colony there for themselves.
Was this Pitcairn Island?
This was not Pitcairn Island.
Okay.
So Pitcairn Island is where they will end up.
Okay.
But at this point, they're trying to go to a different island. I want to say it's called Tubai.
I don't know.
Or something like that, but that might have been the island that Bligh tried to set on the first time. I don't remember what the name of the other one was. So when they do get to Tahiti, first off, a bunch of the men decide that, you know what, we don't want to go along with this anymore. Yeah. We'd rather just stay here in Tahiti and take our chances. Because they all know Tahiti is the first place the British Navy is going to come looking for them.
Oh, yeah.
So a bunch of the mutineers decide that they just want to stay on Tahiti and take their chances when the British Navy comes. Okay. A few of them are still, I don't know if loyal to Fletcher is the right thing, but a few of them are still with him. And they do manage to, because they had made good relations with the Tahitians when they were there. Oh, so that's something I skipped that I probably should have mentioned. One of the reasons they had such a good reception in Tahiti, and one of the reasons why Bligh got this assignment, was because Bligh was with Captain Cook when Cook visited the Tahitian Islands. The chief of the island where Bligh lands remembers Bligh from that. So
and had good memories of him.
Yeah, so there's already a good spirit between them. So so they do manage to con the chief this time. They tell him that, oh yeah, Cook sent us with orders to set up a new colony on this island. So yeah, we could use some supplies, and anybody who wants to come with us, that would be wonderful too. So, yeah, he takes all these resources for them, then sails off. They try to set up their colony on that uninhabited island, but again, the natives are too much and they're not going to be able to settle on there. So then they realize also at this time, okay, well, we can't go back to Tahiti. So this I don't remember. They might have still gone back to Tahiti and found they weren't welcome this time, because by this time they found out that they knew the truth. Oh, so I apologize. I might be getting ahead of myself again. All right. So
sounds like a complicated timeline.
Yes, I apologize for that. All right. So let me go back to the point where they've returned to Tahiti for the first time.
Yes.
All right. Fletcher takes a couple of people off under the ruse of them setting up a new colony. What happens to the mutineers that stay? Eventually, another British ship, the HMS Pandora, does show up looking for them, looking to capture the mutineers and to get the bounty back. I believe all the mutineers do surrender. They don't, or at least they don't put up too much of a fight. From any of the accounts that I read, they're all locked up on board the ship. They call their prison Pandora's box.
Are you serious right now?
Yes.
That makes me really so happy.
And
what else would you call it?
And their voyage back to England begins. And I think it's at this time that the Tahitians are told that, yeah, Fletcher was lying to you. First off, Cook died a while ago. So, yeah, that's not happening.
Okay.
So Pandora begins making its voyage back. I believe they do look for the bounty, but they're not able to find it.
It's a freaking big ocean.
And then Pandora suffers some bad luck. She also gets shipwrecked. A lot of her crew and some of the prisoners do die.
No.
I want to say that there were 12 prisoners that stayed behind on the island. I think about 10 of them survived the shipwreck.
Okay.
And they eventually make their way back to the same Dutch colony that Bligh probably fled to. And then after another long series of transports on different ships, they do eventually make it back to England, and they have their day in court. Bligh is not there for their court-martial because he's off on one of his other adventures at the time. This might be while he's gone back to Tahiti for his successful botany voyage. So, well, you say already, but this is all taking place from the space of about 2 to 3 years or so.
Oh, for real?
Maybe a little bit more spread out than that, but I think it is only within like 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
All right. So, the trial date, I'm remembering the year correctly, this is 1793 that these mutineers are on trial, and it's rather miraculous, I think. So, of the mutineers, I think there were about 10 of them that were tried. 2 of them, or at least one, I think 2 of them get pardons from King George. They have friends or connections, or they can afford lawyers, so they were able to get some sway there. The other 6 of the others are able to some way, somehow get acquitted or get clemency or something to that nature. And if I remember correctly, only 2 or 3 of them are actually hanged for the crime of mutiny, but all the others get away with at most a slap on the wrist.
Right.
So not too bad for them.
Wow.
A couple of them do go back into the service, and with distinction, one of the mutineers who either got a pardon or gets away with it, he ends up going back into the service and eventually gets all the way to the rank of captain during the French Revolutionary War period.
That wasn't a stain on his resume or something.
During the wars against the French Revolution, Napoleon, the British Navy would take anybody that wanted to join, and if you had skills, they turned a blind eye to just about anything.
Wow.
So, yeah, he was able to go on and to have a very successful career. I wish I remember what his name was, but most of the others just kind of disappeared from the scene.
Gosh.
So that's what happened to the first group of mutineers. Second group of mutineers.
So
these are the ones with Fletcher
that stay
Christians
with Fletcher guys.
Yeah,
okay.
Fletcher Christians guys. So like I said, they do go back to that island, but again, they're not able to set up their colony. The natives are too hostile, so they get back on board the ship. If I remember correctly, they do try to go back to Tahiti, but when they get there, they find out that, okay, it's not a warm reception anymore. The people there have known now that Fletcher lied to them, so they take off again. And this time they decide, all right, let's go for Pitcairn Island.
Okay.
They decide to go for Pitcairn Island because its location was not properly logged, which means that there's no verification that it's actually where the maps and the charts think that it is. And in fact, Fletcher spends a good chunk of time looking for the island. They do eventually find it. It's about 180, if I remember correctly, 180 miles farther east than where the position of the island is originally plotted. And so this to them says that, all right, so this is going to be a very good place for us to hide.
Right.
First off, it's uninhabited. Second off, the
Bonus.
soil is very good. Third off, it's a mountain isn't the right word, but it's a very tall raised island, so they'll be able to see anybody coming for a long time. And again, the island's position was not properly plotted, so it means that even if the British do come looking for them, they're going to have as much of a hard time finding them as they did finding the island themselves.
Right.
They do set up, and they've got all, because of the nature of the island, the soil there, and because of the resources that they brought with them and the people that they have with them too.
They have that breadfruit.
Yes, they have that too. But they were able to get other supplies like livestock and whatnot from the Tahitians. So they've got the mutineers. I want to say there's like 8 or so of them, maybe more. They've got, at least Fletcher Christensen had a wife and a son. And then they had, I want to say there were 12 women and at least 6 men with them that they brought from Tahiti also. So a decent amount of people. And they start setting up a life here. It seems like for a time things were peaceful amongst them, but eventually there was a division amongst the people because especially the mutineers kept thinking of the Tahitians as their property rather than hey, we're all equals here on this island.
Right.
So this led to a couple bits of fighting and some murder also. We don't know anything about what happens on the island. There's only one witness to what goes on at this point in time after they arrive at Pitcairn.
Okay.
Because Pitcairn Island is not found by anybody. It is eventually found by an American ship in 1808.
Whoa.
So a long time after all of this transpired.
Yeah.
And by that time, there is only one survivor of the original Bounty crew to give them the story. Everybody else that's on the island at the time are either the Tahitian women that were brought over at the time or children of the people had at that time. All the men, all the Tahitian men have been killed. All the other British men have been killed as well. Or I think one died and the others were supposedly killed. All right, so John Adams, no relation, is the name of the only survivor.
Okay.
He's the one that gives the story and tells the Americans and then the British when they eventually do come what has happened. So the British hear his story and they eventually decide, well, okay, well, it's been a long time. There's really nothing to do about it. So, no, we're not going to bust you. And he's allowed to stay.
Well, it sounds like he's been punished enough by life.
They're not going to do anything to him. But the account that he gives of what happened, he does give differing accounts. So we're, again, not really sure as to what happened. So if I remember correctly, one of the tellings is that Fletcher is killed in a battle, a war between the white men and the Tahitians. Another account that is given, and I think Fletcher's son says this or supported this one too, is that no, actually Fletcher was murdered when he was trying to clear some land for a garden that he was going to grow.
In cold blood?
Yeah, somebody just up and killed him in cold blood because there was arguments over the leadership, I think, of the colony too.
So like Lord of the Flies crap.
Yeah, maybe a little bit like that. So, but whatever happened, there's falling outs amongst the menfolk. Either the Bounty crew are killing each other, or they're killing the Tahitians, and the Tahitians are killing them. Eventually, all but their 4 Bounty men are killed off. Of the 4 that are living, John Adams is one. There's another guy who is considered a decent enough guy, at least in John Adams' telling of the story, was a decent enough guy. But the other 2 were troublemakers. One of whom, I don't remember what his name was, but apparently after all the other men killed themselves, the 4 of them kind of had a moment of peace. But then one of the other 2 men managed to make some alcohol out of one of the plants that grew on the island. And then that caused more trouble. So one night, Adams and the other guy that he said was the only other good guy, I believe they said that they killed these 2. Because there was starting to be bitterness and fighting on the island again.
And this is all coming from John Adams.
Yes.
And he fully admitted to
and possibly some of the children that were there too.
Okay,
so, I say that what we have comes from John Adams because the children that were there, they had grown, several of them were adults now, they also gave their accountings of what happened too, but the Americans and the British ignored them and took everything that Adams said to gospel. Or at least, they might not have ignored them, but their
testimony holds less weight.
They gave more weight to John Adams,
Yeah.
In fact, if I remember correctly, it was one of the two captains. It was either the British captain or the American captain that found them. Said and noted in his log that it is only because of Adams being there that these people had any chance of survival. He is the one who saved and preserved these people.
Somehow, I doubt that. I mean, I would make certain assumptions about the Tahitian women.
The Tahitians knew the weather and probably the topography and everything better. And
how to farm and stuff. Whatever.
Yeah. So yes, eventually those other two men are killed, and it's just now Adams and this other guy. And after that point, Adams said that from there, life was peaceful on the island. And if I remember correctly, the children who did give their testimonies supported that idea that, after the other guys were gone, then they actually managed to have a stable, peaceful time.
Okay.
And unless I'm mistaken, many of the people that still live on this island are the descendants of the mutineers and the Tahitians that were taken.
Wow. So they weren't all just picked up by the Americans and sent home to Tahiti.
I don't believe that John Adams left. I might be wrong, but I believe he stayed there until his dying day. I did see a photograph that I thought was interesting. There was a photo of Fletcher's son and grandson. No, sorry, I was wrong. It was Adam Smith's son and grandson with another of the men's son and grandson. They posed for a picture. Where that picture was taken, either on Pitcairn or somewhere else, I didn't find, but they at least got a picture of themselves taken, so that was a pretty cool thing to look at.
Dang.
And I checked out Pitcairn Island. Yeah, there's still people living there. I don't know how many, but amongst other things, they have a pizzeria there.
Hey.
And they have a museum there where, I believe, amongst other things, so they've since found the wreck of the Bounty. Oh, I didn't mention this. What
happened to the boat?
When they got to the Pitcairn Island, they scrapped the book, they salvaged whatever they could out of it, and then they burnt the Hulk.
Why would they burn it?
2 reasons. Actually probably only one, so that it couldn't be found. It wouldn't identify that, hey, this is where
they were hiding. Okay.
So people have died in the area since then, and they found various pieces of and pulled out different parts of the Bounty from time to time. They found nails. They found the rudder. They pulled out at least one cannon. I believe that cannon was restored and is actually on display at a museum in Australia. I think the rudder was brought back to Pitcairn itself, but I might be wrong. The rudder might be on display somewhere else. So so that is the story of what happened to how there came to be the Bounty, its mission, the mutiny, and what happened to the people involved. Wow. And this one I saved for last because I thought this would be an especially fun one for you.
I cannot wait.
In 1984, for about 18 months, a musical called Mutiny ran in London theaters.
It was a musical?
Yes.
I have to find this.
And I saved the link for the original playlist for you, but it's on my computer.
Oh my gosh, you have to send that to me.
I'll have to email that to you when I get the chance, because I know how much you love
so
musicals.
much. It's a historical musical. It's even better, right?
Keep in mind, though, unless I'm mistaken, I believe it's a musical that is based off of a book, which is based off of at least, I think, 70 or so years. No, more than that. Probably closer to 100 years or so. No. All right, okay, I don't remember when the book was.
Do some math.
I'm guessing the musical is based on the book, which is based on the tellings, instead of the musical being based on the tellings.
Yeah, whatever. Still a musical. I'm sure it's awesome. Okay, but there have been a million versions like movies and books and plays and stuff.
There have been, and if I remember correctly, there were arguments that I read that said up until about the 1930s, there was fairness given to the idea of, Blythe might not have been this harsh, cruel disciplinarian, but because of the way they did it in the way they portrayed him in the 1930s movie, it was either that or because of the way he was written in the book specifically, that people latched onto, and that's why to this day we think that no, Bly was this hardcore disciplinarian.
That's how he's portrayed.
Maybe there was some humanity to him.
Well, see, that makes for an easier story. It's much easier to explain. They mutinied because he was a bad guy, rather than getting into the nuance of everything going on.
And I think that's especially likely given that the movie being the one that kind of did this, because to this day, movies that are based on history will embellish things because, even though this thing really didn't happen, a movie demands that this kind of a thing must happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all of 300?
Okay, so that's a good one, but a better one, I think, or at least one that's more recent to my mind, there was so I know we've talked about Braveheart before. I'm not talking about Braveheart here.
So much.
I'm not talking about Braveheart here. But there was another movie that was called The Outlaw King, which I watched, which I loved so much.
I remember you mentioning that.
So that was about Robert the Bruce. You could argue that was a sequel to Braveheart because it tells Robert the Bruce's story after the events of Braveheart. Among the things that happens in that movie, at the end of that movie, there's a battle. The battle is real. And a lot of the details of this battle, they did honestly. It was at the right place. The ground was the same. The tactics that were used by both sides were the same. But while Robert the Bruce was at this battle, his rival, King Edward II, because Edward I, the bad guy from the Braveheart, was dead already.
Okay.
His rival, King Edward II, was not in reality there. He was in London at the time, far, far away from this battlefield. But in the movie, they put him there.
We need him there.
Not only did they put him there, but they put him that while the rest of the English army is running away and the Scots are cheering, saying, yay, yay, we won the battle. None of, apparently, the Scottish soldiers are noticing that, hey, our king, and none of the English soldiers apparently either are noticing that, hey, our king and their king are still behind the lines duking it out privately. So, of course, that never happened, but the nature of Hollywood demands we have to have that kind of a scene.
Oh, it's a great cinematic moment, I'm sure.
Oh, yes, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it very much. I loved the movie. But that was absolutely an absurd scene.
Right. But it's a simpler way to tell the story, and it's faster, and I get it. Poor Bly, though.
So,
his
reputation
is forever tarnished.
Take that. Let's say that people look to that movie instead of looking at the primary sources for their evidence, and if people go off of that for, say, the next 100 years, then our great-great-great-grandchildren are all going to think that, oh, no, what happened in that movie is what really happened. And that was the real characterization of those people. They all the real men in history, they were really like what we saw in those characters. Yep.
That's why all historical fiction movies should be outlawed.
What? Whoever said that?
They're contributing to the spread of misinformation, and we're teaching our children the wrong thing.
To be fair, I don't think that's their goal. I think their goal is to entertain, is to tell a cool story with a little bit of their own embellishments to make it cooler from time to time.
Right.
It is the responsibility of you and I as the audience to want to know, hey, is this thing that we saw true? Or if we are curious enough to look up and do our own research on the matter.
But you and
I know. Instead to just assume that, oh yes, I know that plenty of people will just be happy to take Hollywood's word for it. And you can't change that. You can't. I've been a teacher for a long time, and what I've learned in that time, in fact, I think I've learned this before I even started teaching, was you can't force people to learn.
You can try, though.
Oh, yeah, you can't try to force people to learn. You can motivate them to learn. You can encourage them to learn, but you cannot force people to learn.
Yep. Okay, fine. Don't ban historical movies, but they should be required to be 100% accurate.
I disagree with that as well. While I wouldn't mind if they were more accurate, just the fact that these movies exist, I think is a wonderful thing, because I would hope, at least, that more often than not, it gets people who wouldn't otherwise be interested curious in something that happened.
Right.
It's probably the most popular medium for getting people interested in history.
Right, but then hopefully they take that step and actually find out the truth.
I would hope so. I'd be lying if I said that some of the things that I've looked up in my lifetime haven't been because I saw a movie about something that either I wasn't familiar with or I hadn't heard of before, and the movie successfully caught my interest in the thing.
Yeah. So why this story, though?
So recently that movie Oppenheimer came out. I got a lot of questions from people about, so what really happened? Was this a real story? Did Oppenheimer really exist? Yeah. So that was fun. I enjoyed that because I got a lot of people coming up to me. They're interested in history, and they're letting me teach them.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's cool. Okay, but my question, though, is why this story? Why is this story so redone all the time? Why do we care about it that we've made a million movies and plays and books?
My guess is because, at least as far as Hollywood, or at least as far as the entertainment industry is concerned, you could argue that this has an element of realism to it. But I really think, given the accounts that I read, I really think that no, this is something that the entertainment, that either the literature or Hollywood threw into the mix, was that it became a story about I'm probably getting the sides wrong, of authority versus freedom. is basically the easiest way I can say it. So because of that, that's why it continues to resonate with us today. Some of the stories that stick around with us are the ones that deal with messages and themes, concepts that we are still wrestling with today.
Right.
Gilgamesh is still talked of today because it's dealing with how do you deal with death? How do you deal with the loss of a loved one, a friend? What does that do to somebody? We still go through that. So the story is still pertinent, so we still tell the story. If shaping the story of the Mutiny of the Bounty on it being a authority versus freedom argument is something that we still resonate with today.
Definitely.
And we're not just talking about like, freedom from an authoritarian government, but even like going specifically with the bounty example, assuming that the entertainment argument gets it right. How many of us have an overbearing disciplinarian boss who just makes us feel small and belittled all the time? Who makes us... Fletcher said that he was put in hell because of Bly's treatment of him.
Wait. In his journals or in the movie version?
In the witness testimonies that we have, those were his exact words, that he told people he was in hell.
That's a great image.
Because of the way that Bly was just being mean to him during this voyage, or during this part of the voyage, at least where they mutinied.
Yeah.
So going back, how many of us have that over tyrannical boss who, even if they're not that bad, we see them, our interpretation of them is that bad, and we think of ourselves as just being in this horrible, awful condition. How much longer can we continue with this? So this is a story that still resonates a lot with us today. Right. And as long as that's the case, this is a story that's probably going to continue to be told, especially since it's kind of gotten arguably a niche on the market. I mean, there have been lots of cases of mutiny throughout history, and I dare say that the Bounty was the most popular one of them all.
Well, yeah, I couldn't name a single other mutiny, but that's just me. I don't know anything. But, so you have seen one of the movies, right?
I have seen clips of the Mel Gibson, Anthony Hopkins movie. I have never sat down and watched any of the movies, nor have I read the book.
Because I'm curious how, like, what's the conclusion for the movie versions? Because the way you tell the story makes me wonder, like, okay, so what's the ending? Because I don't know where you would stop the story to give you a satisfying ending, tie up loose ends, make you feel good out of the theater.
Okay, well, if it's based on reality, then no, probably not. The ending, to simplify, would basically be this. Bly goes on and has a healthy career despite the embarrassment of a mutiny on his ship.
But he's the villain in the fictionalized version, so we can't end with that.
Well, I'm talking about the reality version. This is how bland, I guess you could say it would be. Bly goes on to have a healthy and successful career.
Right.
The mutineers that are caught, most of them are freed. Only 2 or 3 of them are executed for their crimes. They go on and have lives, some of them even good careers. And of the ones that managed to avoid being captured or found, all their lives, they had a very, sounds like, tragic, horrible ending and all, because they turned on each other and killed each other far away from their homes, and only one of them survived to tell about it.
Right, and that part when they're on Pitcairn could be a movie in itself, it sounds like.
Possibly.
But if we're talking about the mutiny, like, where's the happy ending? Where's the lesson? I'm very curious now. Maybe we have to watch the movie.
I would argue that there isn't one. It would depend on how the directors and or the authors chose to spun the tale.
I need to know.
Because when you look at it from just the historical perspective, I would say there really was no happy ending in this scenario.
Yeah, there's no satisfying.
I would say of all the people in it, the happiest ending goes to Bly.
Yeah.
Because Bly, again, even though he had a little bit of an embarrassment from this, goes on and has a very successful career for himself.
Right.
The lives of the men who were caught but were not, but were eventually set free. Well, some of them went on and had prosperous lives, but the others, even if they had decent lives after that, they still had the misfortune of being part of the mutinous crew, forcefully or otherwise, and then having to stay in Tahiti, waiting for them to be arrested, having to make that voyage back home in not comfortable conditions like Bly would have had, but in prison conditions, and then staying in prison for however long before their trial date.
Right.
And then the ones who did mutiny and stayed with Fletcher, well, they didn't get a happy ending at all.
No. So I don't know. It's weird.
And additionally, so we keep talking about the Bounty crew.
Yeah.
But it would be, I think, unfair to ignore the Tahitians that are basically conned into joining Fletcher. They're conned into joining Fletcher, who are true victims if you want to make the argument that they're either there were or weren't victims, you have to be able to say that no, the Tahitians, the men and the women that were conned into coming with Fletcher, they were the victims in this whole story. So the men all died, and the women, even though they didn't all die, I think we can be reasonably sure that not all of them were not raped. Yeah. It's more than likely that they were. Or some of the accounts that survive attest to the idea that not only were they raped, they were passed around.
Oh gosh. So see, that makes me think. Well, okay, so Fletcher and his crew are the villains, and Bligh is the one who overcomes. So it sounds to me like the story should be turned on its head. But
I think that would be a fair thing.
How confident are you that in the media entertainment portrayals, Bligh is the villain? How confident are you in saying that? Because it makes no sense to me.
With everything that I have read now, even if Bligh was a bad guy, even if Bligh did deserve this mutiny, he still goes on and does and becomes a good thing.
Yeah.
Whereas Fletcher and the mutineers, or the ones that stayed with Fletcher, they don't go on and do a good thing.
Right.
Even if that was Fletcher's goal, he does some undisputably bad things. And then bad things befall them after he chose to do some bad things.
Right.
Even if we want to believe that he was absolutely 100% justified in the mutiny, and therefore Bligh is the villain of the mutiny and Fletcher is the hero of the mutiny. After that story is over, Fletcher, or at least his group becomes the bad group, and Bligh's group becomes the good group.
Yeah.
Or rather, maintains, I would say, the establishment of being the good group.
Well, that settles it. You need to watch the old movie, and I need to listen to the musical, and we'll have our answer.
How about you do you, and I'll do me, and
I want to know, though, so you need... I'm good.
What do you want to know? I told you about all this.
No, I want to know how the movie portrays it now.
Well, then go watch the movie.
I don't want to watch the movie.
Okay, I'm a history teacher. I'm not a movie professor. I'm not going to watch the movie for you so I can teach you about it.
You like movies more than I do.
I like movies, but I'm not... This
is an action movie.
I have avoided watching it all this time. I'm not suddenly eager to go watching it now.
Oh, please.
Probably because, well, now that I know, you've said this before. Once you like to watch the movie first and then read the book. Oh, I've read the book now. Not the
literal book. Yeah.
I've read the primary sources of what happened. So I'm not much interested in reading this author's interpretation or seeing these movie adaptations
But
anymore.
You do like historical movies.
I do like historical movies.
So that's what this is.
And it's entirely possible that one day I will be sitting in my room so bored to tears, and as I'm flipping through whatever video app exists at that point in time, one of the things that's going to come across is one of the versions of Mutiny on the Bounty that they made, and I might just say to myself, sure, why not? Click. Unless that happens, I don't see myself making any room in my schedule to watch the movie.
Maybe instead I'll con Primus into watching the old silent movie version. She would love that.
She would hate you forever for that. Did we tell them about the silent movie?
We did not. Our oldest is into film. She's taking a film class this semester, so it's like she watches movies and discusses them. It's not too crazy, but yeah, one of her first assignments was to watch The Artist.
And yes, I thought this was hilarious because in my history lessons, I teach all my students that with the advent of sound in the 20s, all silent films stopped.
Yeah,
before
they
the
became
30s
obsolete.
Began. Yeah, the silent films were replaced by the talkies. Such an imaginative title that they gave themselves. It's a great title. I love saying it.
Yeah.
So yes, to find out that my daughter is watching a silent film, I thought, oh, that's cool. And then when I said like it was one that was made in the modern day, she's not watching some like old classic from the 20s or before. I'm like, what?
She was so mad.
I was thinking to myself, well, okay, I get that to some people this is art. But in my mind frame, this is as much to art as that was whoever it was that stuck that banana with a piece of duct tape on a canvas and said, that's art.
Yeah, she hated it. She would stop it every 5 minutes and tell us, I can't believe it's black and white. It didn't even hold to the
silent screen rules of, okay, you had a live band of some kind playing to give the audience some musical atmosphere.
So we're going to invite a band into our house so she can watch the movie. Is that what you're saying?
No interruption for a narration block.
Yeah, well, they didn't do that enough. Most of it, like, you could see that they were having dialogue, but it didn't tell you what they were saying. She was getting so frustrated.
Those are staples
of the silent film genre. But I'm sure she will love watching Mutiny on the Bounty with me.
Mm-hmm.
The really, really old black and white silent one.
I'm enjoying that, and all this talk we've just had about mutiny and about authority versus freedom. You think that you are going to get a teenager to sit down with you and watch a movie that you know she disdains.
I won't tell her that it's the silent version.
Oh, yes, because I'm sure that will go so much better. Like Fletcher didn't tell the Tahitians that, hey, I said we were going to be building this cool colony, but...
Yeah. I mean, they did build a colony. He didn't lie. Totally. Completely.
Are you defending a kidnapper and a rapist?
They did build a colony.
You're really defending
I'm just saying, there's nuance. I'm done. That's it. I better not. I'm not saying another word.
Yourself a deep hole right now. I think our listeners are going to be very gross by you.
I'm done digging.
In fact, you know what? I think you deserve this. I'm going to say it.
What?
You are a fool.
Oh no!
So I'm trying not to say idiots anymore because idiot would be rude. So I'm not going to call you an idiot. I'm just going to call you a fool.
It's the same thing.
No, it's not. Fool is quite as bad as an idiot.
All right, we're done. We're done.
Are we?
We're done. This was, I think, longer than our Battle of Athens episode.
Was that our longest episode?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's going to be about the same amount. Yeah.
Oh, so the last thing I want to say then is, and everything that I was reading about, the thing that still kind of bugged me and made me sad most of all is that, all right, so this is such a popular story.
Yeah.
And we really don't know what caused the mutiny.
Yeah.
The best we have is that supposedly Bligh was being really mean to Fletcher. Like, we have no details. What mean thing did he do? Did he call Fletcher a name? Did he saw his mama? Did he whip him? We don't know what for sure set this off. All we know is that Fletcher wasn't happy. That is, it seems like everything that I read, that is the only thing that we can guarantee was true, is that Fletcher wasn't happy.
Wow. So it really just comes down to Fletcher, and he was able to get a couple guys loyal to him.
Again, as far with everything that I read, that seems to me to be the only inarguable thing. He wasn't happy. Was Bligh super mean or not? Arguable. Was there a mutiny? Not arguable. Was Fletcher unhappy? Seems to me not arguable. He was unhappy. Yeah. But why specifically? What was it that inspired him? What was it that pushed him over the edge to go with mutiny? Especially since, like I said, these two have known each other and served together before, so many years before any of this. I mean, to my mind, that has to take a lot to cause that, to go to mutiny for that, instead of just, like, biding your time and getting off at the next port or something of that nature.
Right. That's a good mystery. Like, it was probably something stupid. And
perhaps that's another one of the things that might make this still be a story that's going to continue also, is that mystery of, we don't know. Yeah, we have our interpretations. We can fill in the blanks and say that, oh, yeah, this is probably what happened. But like I said, everything that I looked at, the part that bothers me the most is do not know.
Wow. And the world may never know.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening. And thank you again for Raymond for suggesting this topic.
Yes, thank you, Raymond.
This was really fun.
It was.
If you liked what you heard, then please subscribe, tell your friends, and leave us a 5-star review.
And I should probably congratulate Raymond, because you made me, I felt so embarrassed when I found out that I didn't know this was based on truth.
You get a gold star for embarrassing Christopher.
Very, very good, Raymond. I commend you. I tip my hat to you, sir. I am still somewhat embarrassed right now thinking that I had no idea that this was a true story. All my life, I thought that this is just some book that everybody knows about, or some movie that everybody knows about. Don't know why it's so popular.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that so much. If you'd like to contact us, we can be found on Gmail, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Married to History Pod. I just took your script.
Yes, you did, but you do that from time to time.
So now you got to ad-lib the next part.
So just be sure to specify in your message if it's a silly or serious, because we don't want to treat a genuine quest for knowledge, like I believe this one was, like a joke. Even though apparently some people will make jokes about kidnappers who kidnap men and women from their home island and say, oh, but they really did build a colony.
I did not make a joke about that.
That sounded like a joke to me. Just
whatever. Talk to you next time. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, now we're working.
Are we, though? I don't think of this as work, especially since we don't get paid for it.
Well, yeah.
This is fun. This is leisure. This is hobby.
It is so much fun.
I think so. Did I detect another error of sarcasm in there?
That wasn't sarcasm!
Whoa, got defensive super fast.
Not everything I say is sarcastic. I mean,
forgive me, it's kind of hard to tell. Your sarcastic tone and your resting tone, they sound so much alike.
Yep. It's like my resting bee face.
I wasn't going to say it.